My fusion system. Fusing 1,000 chickens at the start. Chapters 106 to 120. Chapter 106. No one can survive the Black Moon Nights. Young Master, the Black Moon Knights have all assembled. Half an hour later, Alan stood at the mansion entrance and knelt as he spoke to Watson. There were 65 Black Moon Knights behind him. They were neatly dressed and had long swords at their waists. It was a set of silver tier equipment. Lucas, you and the new knights can stay in the castle. List, you should stay too. Watson swept his gaze across the men in front of him and said, Alan, choose 20 men and come with me. They had to leave enough men at the castle if Lady Gluttony or her bandit gang members would attack them. After all, Lady Gluttony was a cunning person, so they had to be on their guard. Yes, young Master Watson. Yes, young Master. Alan and List agreed at the same time. Then, Alan selected 20 strong knights to go with Watson. Those who were not selected looked disappointed. They thought that they had missed an excellent opportunity to contribute. The gate of the mansion opened after the troops left. The 3 manor owners who had quarreled in the hall walked out with their faces bruised and swollen. Christine's clothes were disheveled, with her underwear revealed. There were many scratches on Jack and Morgan's faces. A large part of their beard and hair was missing. The gold tier armor that Watson had fused was in Christine's hands. Have you decided the winner? Watson looked back and pretended to ask them. It seemed that Christine had won. Indeed, women had a unique advantage in a fight. Yes, young Master Watson. Morgan and Jack have agreed to give this armor to me. Don't worry, I'll send 20 maids here tomorrow, Christine said with a pained expression. Her handmaidens were trained singers. If they were sold to a great nobleman, she could get more than 10 gold coins for each of them. She would lose a few hundred gold coins in that transaction. That was only the reward for Black Moon Castle. She also had to give Morgan 200 gold coins and to sleep with Jack once so that they would not continue to fight over it. She had spent almost 1,000 gold coins to buy the gold tier armor, which would typically only be enough to purchase regular equipment. Christine's expression softened, and she smiled as she looked at the armor in her hand. Gold coins were common, she could still earn more of them. Plus, she had earned a lot. That armor could guarantee her safety. Young Master Watson, it looks like you guys are leaving? Jack and Morgan had tidied their messy clothes to maintain their poise. Jack, who was missing a piece of his beard, had asked curiously. They're just going out to catch a little mouse. Watson chuckled as he told them softly. However, Christine and the other 2 knew the mouse that he meant. When they learned that the Vermilion Manor had been attacked, they panicked. Then, they wished that there were a few more manors near to them. That way, they would have another reason to ask Watson for something. If they had the gold tier armor, they would not need to be afraid of any attack at all. Those who were below gold tier would not be able to break the gold tier armor's defense, and no gold tier elites would be abandoned. That's right, you guys should come along. Also, please inform the manor owners nearby. Let them see the consequences of causing trouble at the border. Watson made up his mind about the consequences of going against Black Moon Castle. Many of the nearby manors knew that Black Moon Castle had defeated more than 10 manors. However, they did not understand how they had won, so he wanted to take the opportunity to let them see it so that it would dispel their worries. Young Master Watson, that's not a good idea. I still have things to do, Morgan complained unhappily. It was not suitable for him to appear in front of others. As for Lady Gluttony's capture, there were already many guards searching for her in Misty Forest. How long would it take for him to find her? Watson looked at Morgan and said, You shall help us capture Lady Gluttony. If you can capture her, then I will reward you. Morgan, don't go if you don't want to, but I'm going anyway, Jack said immediately. Christine had already worn her gold armor and lifted her hair. I'm going too. Who said I'm not going? Morgan jumped. Black Moon Castle is my ally, their trouble is our trouble. I will still go even if there is no reward, young Master Watson. I have a few Iron Tier guards at home, and I will bring them with me later. They might be a little weak, but it's only a search, after all. The more, the merrier. After he said that, Morgan smiled at Watson with a flattering expression. Do you think this arrangement is suitable? Shameless. The Black Moon Knights pursed their lips as they looked at Alan, who was standing beside Watson. They felt that Morgan was very similar to someone they knew. Alan's expression tensed when he felt their gaze. Why are you all looking at me? Alan bowed to Watson. Young Master Watson, don't worry. Lady Gluttony escaped because I was too weak last time. But I will capture her this time. I won't mind injuries or even death. However, do you think you can bestow me with 2 more pieces of gold tier equipment to help me in capturing her? Watson said, get lost. Everyone there tsked when they heard that. A moment later, Watson and Alan led the chosen 20 Black Moon Knights and Christine out of Black Moon Castle. Then, Watson whistled, and a golden 12-winged lion that looked like it had been made of gold immediately flew toward him and landed in front of everyone. Watson climbed onto the golden flash's back. He raised his slender arm and waved it in the distance. Capture Lady Gluttony and kill the bandit gangs. Black Moon Knights are on the move, and not a blade of grass will grow. The Knights are on the move, not a blade of grass will grow. Those 20 Black Moon Knights drew their long swords and knocked on the armor on their chests with loud banging sounds. They're quite imposing, but the slogan is a little excessive, not a blade of grass will grow. Even if these 20 people are all gold tier warriors, they won't be able to do it, Morgan said to the 2 other manor owners beside him with a calm expression. He thought that young people did like to show off. He would have to do more to capture their target. Gulp. Morgan was about to say something when he suddenly noticed that his 2 companions were swallowing their saliva simultaneously. They were staring at the sky without saying another word. He thought that it was strange, so Morgan took the opportunity to look at the sky above him. The sky had turned dark. One by one, the 2-headed ligers spread their huge white wings and glided across the sky as they let out ear-piercing roars. The sound of their wings as they flapped was like muffled thunder. There were 1,000 of those silver-tier magical beasts, and they had blocked the sun. Kill! Alan led the 20 Black Moon Knights as they shouted to call for their mounts. Then, they climbed onto their beast and escorted Watson into the sky. Watson was in the lead, his right hand pointed at the sky, and his left hand pointed into the distance. A herd of beasts had covered the sky and the sun. He could see his territory on the ground, and his small figure looked so majestic. The scene was like an eternal painting as it was deeply imprinted in Christine and the other 2 manor owners' eyes. If 20 Black Moon Knights could not make a single blade of grass grow, what about 1,000 magical beasts? Those magical beasts would trample the earth wherever they passed, let alone grass. Chapter 107. The Magical Beast Army. Boom, boom, what's going on? Is there an earthquake? Bright Manor was a manor located near Black Moon City. They were a manor that raised cows and sold milk to earn money. They were also one of the manors that had surrendered to Black Moon Castle in the past few days. Its fat owner, Norton, was on a chair when he felt the earth shake. The fat on his belly trembled before he felt it in his chest. His heart shook with the fat. He had just heard the news about how Vermilion Manor had been destroyed the previous day, so he did not dare to go anywhere that day. He ordered more than 10 guards in the manor to guard his room and not to take a single step away, and when he heard the commotion outside, he wondered if a bandit gang had attacked his manor. Look at how the ground shakes. How many people are there in this bandit gang? Norton's lips curled into a bitter smile. He was a very timid person. Otherwise, he would have gone with Jack, Morgan, and Christine when they invited him to Black Moon Castle during the day to seek justice. Master Norton, something terrible has happened. There are many magical beasts outside. At that moment, a guard opened the door and rushed in with a panicked expression. Magical beasts? Norton closed his eyes in despair. If it were a bandit gang, he would have to hand over all of his assets and kneel on the ground to beg for mercy. Perhaps he could survive then. Those magical beasts would not listen to him, and if he were to fall into their hands, he would be torn to pieces. It was winter, but it was not time for the magical beasts to be out. How could there be a magical beast? Then, Norton heard a loud sound from the top of his head. The entire beam of the house had been torn apart until it revealed a huge hole. A ferocious magical beast with 2 heads poked its head into the hole. Its saliva dripped onto Norton's forehead. Countless similar magical beasts were behind that one. They were so densely packed that one could not see beyond them. Norton rolled his eyes and sat down on the ground. He almost fainted. What kind of magical beast was that? It was too scary. Furthermore, it could fly. How could one escape from it? Just as he thought he was doomed, the magical beast suddenly spoke. More accurately, it was the person behind the magical beast who had spoken. Norton, come up quickly. Norton looked up. He realized that the person who spoke was the manor owner, Morgan, who had looked for him during the day. He was on the back of the magical beast, and he had stretched his hand toward. His face was bruised and swollen. He did not know if someone had beaten him. "Morgan, why are you on a magical beast? What's going on? I'll explain it to you later. Come here and get all the guards in your house too." The Misty Forest. As the Holy Dragon Kingdom borders, it was the largest forest close to the Dragonspine Snow Mountain. It was rich in magical beasts. The manors that traded in magical beasts at the border would usually capture them from Misty Forest. The Misty Forest was foggy all year round, so it was easy to get lost in the forest. When the fog was at its thickest, its visitors could not even see their own hands, and the magical beasts there would not usually go out. People said that the Dragonspine Snow Mountain was once the territory of a prosperous country 8,000 years ago. Due to various reasons, that country was destroyed, and many magical beasts had appeared. Whether the rumors were true or not, the fact that there were many ruins in the Misty Forest was genuine. That was why adventurers often went there to explore. That day, the Misty Forest experienced the most lively moment in its history. 1,000 silver-tier magical beasts, led by a golden lion-like beast, charged into the depths of the Misty Forest. Some of those magical beasts had a rider on them. "Morgan, can you tell me what's going on now?" Norton was on the back of a two-winged liger. His face was dull, as if he had not woken up yet. He had not woken up, indeed. He had been in his manor, and in just a short while, he had arrived at the Misty Forest with his guards beside him. All of them were trying to hold onto the fur of a two-winged liger shamefully. They were shouting things like, "This is a silver-tier magical beast, right? It has 2 heads. It's too overbearing. And, I'm sitting on a silver-tier magical beast. How useless. Was it not only a silver-tier magical beast? What was so great about sitting on one?" Norton wondered about that. However, it was truly amazing to be able to sit on a silver-tier magical beast and go so far without falling off. The wind blew on Norton's face like a small knife that cut him. He could not even open his eyes. The silver-tier magic beast was too fast. He could not even see anything in front of him before he passed it with a whoosh. In addition, it was winter. It was no exaggeration to say that if he waited any longer, he might wet his pants. "Norton, you'll know soon. Black Moon Castle is capturing someone. Wasn't the Vermilion Manor attacked yesterday? That's the reason Black Moon Castle wants to wipe out all the bandit groups in the vicinity. We're here to help find the person who attacked the Vermilion Manor. Don't drag me down. Do you see all these magical beasts? These are all from Black Moon Castle." Morgan explained with a proud tone as if those magical beasts were his. "Wipe out the bandit gang?" Norton's eyes widened. Black Moon Castle was too bold. Did they know how many bandit strongholds were there near the Misty Forest? He looked at the magical beasts around him and felt relieved. Well, no matter how strong those bandit gangs, they would not be able to withstand the damage of so many silver-tier magical beasts. Besides him, many manor owners were also invited onto the back of the magical beasts. At that moment, they showed the same expression as they looked around with hesitation. "Alan, which bandit gang is the closest to this place?" At the front of the team, Watson sat cross-legged on a golden beast as he asked the guard next to him. Alan took the border map that Nightingale had given him and studied it carefully. This map doesn't indicate the specific location of the bandit gang. Only a few bandit gangs are marked. It's probably because there aren't many bandits and too much mobility, so it's not easy to investigate. The bandit gang that's closest to this place is marked as the Vortex Bandit Gang. Then let's start with them first. As long as they are a bandit gang, leave no one alive. A cold gleam flashed in Watson's eyes as he commanded the monster horde to charge forward quickly. During that process, he did not sit idle. When he saw suitable monsters in the Misty Forest, he immediately fused with them. Since he was already a gold tier elite, he could fuse with any creature below gold tier at will. System fusion successful. Master has fused 2 bronze tier magic beasts, the wind-splitting eagle. System fusion successful. Congratulations, Master, for obtaining a silver tier magical beast, the giant ice bear claw. Numerous fusion notifications echoed in Watson's mind, and the number of magic beasts that followed him increased continuously. His idea was straightforward. On the way to exterminating the bandit gang, he would kill as many magical beasts as he could. Not only would he increase his strength, But he would also be able to prevent those magical beasts from harming others during the winter. When he saw the same thing, such as two iron tier pythons, magical beasts entangled in a tree and mating, Watson fused them into a bronze tier water bucket python. When he saw more magical beasts flocked out of the forest, he fused them into a silver tier storm eagle. Other than fusing with similar magic beasts, he had also fused with many different magical beasts. There were some winged pigs, three-headed rabbits, and other strange beasts. Within a short period, the light around Watson continued to shine. The number of magical beasts had increased several times from the initial 1,000, and the number continued to rise. Do you feel that the number of magical beasts around you has increased? Norton, who was on a two-winged liger, hugged his shoulders and shivered as he asked weakly. "You just noticed?" someone beside him asked. The manor owner raised his head and saw a manor owner held by a 5-meter-tall white giant bear. The bear's arms were covered with spiral patterns, and its claws were sharper than swords. It crushed the trees nearby. Its blood-red eyes were staring at the poor man in its hands. It roared and spat on his face. Norton turned his head again and found that the giant goshawk in the air held more people. Their screams spread far and wide. What? Norton swallowed his saliva. He felt that the magical beast under his bottom was not so scary anymore. It seemed like he could control those beasts. Did Black Moon Castle's master summon all those magical beasts? It seemed like he could control the magical beasts. What kind of magic was that? There was no need to create so many magical beasts to kill those bandit gangs. Were they trying to flatten the entire Misty Forest? Chapter 108. The End of the Bandits. Boss, something terrible has happened. There are a lot of magical beasts outside. It seems that there is a magical beast riot in the Misty Forest. There are at least 10,000 of them. Should we inform our brothers and evacuate this area? Near the Misty Forest, on a certain mountain peak. On the low mountain peak, there were tall walls and many kinds of buildings. A person dressed as a bandit asked the tall and sturdy leader who was wearing sky blue armor in front of him. His expression looked panicked. There were also a few other people dressed in the same attire behind that particular bandit. They all seemed to be in a panic. When he saw the injuries on his subordinate, the Vortex bandit gang leader turned his head and frowned. Logically speaking, now is not the time for magical beasts to come out of the mountain. Why are there so many magical beasts here? Forget it. Take all of our valuables with us. We'll retreat. The bandit gang did not have a fixed home. Most of them would choose the mountain top outside the Misty Forest as their base because there were many magical beasts there during winter. The forest was easy to defend but hard to attack, and when the magical beasts were out during the winter, the bandit gang would follow them for their hunt. It was even more impossible for anyone to attack that place. The bandits did as commanded. They dragged large and small bags as they descended the mountain. Hurry up, or I will kill you all. Along the way, some bandits commanded a group of young girls in shabby clothes. They whipped and scolded them. Those young girls were women they had brought back from their hunt a few winters ago. Some of them were from noble families. The bandits loved their tender flesh. After they were brought back and tortured for a few years, their hair and faces had become unkempt, and their eyes were dull. Their bodies trembled when they saw the whip. They did not dare to resist. When they saw those young girls, some bandits' eyes flashed. Boss, even though I don't know why the magical beasts in the Misty Forest would riot ahead of time, this is a good opportunity. Winter has started so early this year, it means that we have more time to go out. We might even be able to catch a few beautiful women. I'm tired of playing with the ones in front of us. Alright, we'll talk about it after we leave the Misty Forest, the Vortex bandit gang leader said as he looked backward. Boom! A series of explosions came from behind them. The milky white fog stirred in the endless Misty Forest. Since he was standing on the mountainside, he could see the trees below them breaking rapidly. These magical beasts are too fast. Are normal magical beasts that fast? The Vortex bandit gang leader looked down with a puzzled expression. He took the opportunity to make a gesture of indication for his subordinates to stop. Wait, let these magical beasts go past us first. The Vortex bandit gang was not a large group, but they had existed for nearly 10 years. They were very familiar with the changes in the Misty Forest. Usually, when the magical beasts were in a riot, they would run and tear apart anyone in front of them, but they would not take the initiative to climb. Therefore, the bandits chose to nest in the hilly area of the forest. They knew that the magical beasts would not hurt them if they could not retreat in time. The Vortex bandit gang members made the right choice, but the result was out of their expectations. Roar! A goshawk appeared in front of them. It had turned from a small black dot into a huge monster. Its wings, which were several meters long, streaked across the sky as it cast a shadow on the ground. The eagle's wings brought up a green storm, which was dozens of meters high. Sand and stones flew as the bandits squinted their eyes. The rocks hit the armor on their bodies with a bang. This is the Storm Eagle, a silver tier magical beast, the Vortex bandit gang leader muttered as he looked at the sky. The magical beasts were usually weaker during the early winter and stronger at the end. They would only see 1 or 2 silver tier magical beasts at the end of winter in previous years. They did not expect to see one that year, so they were unlucky. "Boss, look." A bandit's voice trembled as he pointed in the direction of the Storm Eagle. Countless black shadows were behind that silver tier magical beast. The sound as their wings flapped was like thunder and waves. Those black shadows quickly arrived in front of them. They were ferocious magical beasts with 2 heads. Those tiger and lion heads roared alternately, and behind those magical beasts, there were also thousands more different magical beasts with wings. All those magical beasts only had one characteristic, and that was that they emitted a silver tier aura. These are all silver tier magical beasts? The Vortex bandit gang leader and a group of his subordinates could hear the sound of ping pong from their hands. All the bags they carried had fallen to the ground, and the things inside were scattered all around them. They wondered if they had seen it wrongly. Most of the magical beasts that ventured outside the forest were iron tier beasts. Why were those in front of them silver tier? The bandits were in fear and disbelief. They even forgot to run away. Soon after that, they saw thousands of magical beasts in the sky. Their heads turned at the same time, and a dazzling light beam was condensed in their mouths. Together, they formed a light cannon that spanned over 100 meters, and it swept across their bodies. Kacha! The mountain peak tilted and broke. The 100-meter-tall mountain peak slid down gradually. A few girls in ragged clothes looked at the falling mountain and then at the corpses that had been vaporized by battle aura, the scattered jewelry, and the magical beasts that filled the sky. They did not speak for a long time, but their eyes had light again. Alan was on a 2-winged liger beast a few miles away from the mountain peak. He looked back. He said with some regret, "Young Master Watson, it was not easy to destroy a bandit gang, and even the hill was flattened. Are we really not going to take their treasures? No need. Those treasures will be left to those who were imprisoned by the bandit gang. I think they need those more than we do. We are here to kill bandits." Watson's right hand, which was covered with a light elemental combat aura, held a bloody head. Then, he waved his left hand. "Which is the next bandit group?" "Young Master Watson, it's the Fury Soul Bandit Gang." "What about the next one?" "It's the Extreme Evil Bandit Gang." "What about the next one?" "Yes?" Alan flipped the map. "Young Master Watson, the map has the locations of dozens of bandit groups. I guess we'll have to ask Sven about the rest. Then we'll crush these people first and then find Sven." That day was the end of the bandits. Dozens of bandit gangs of various sizes around the misty forest were all annihilated within a day. They had about 1,000 members altogether, but not a single one survived the attack. Even the mountain they occupied collapsed because of the magical beasts' attacks. Those were witnessed by the people who had managed to escape from the bandit gangs. Those people remembered countless pairs of wings and countless silver magical beasts. They also saw a golden lion-like creature with 12 wings that danced among the silver tier magical beasts. Then, they also saw the youth on that magical beast. He looked like a king. Some people said that the youth was Watson, the youngest child of the Black Moon Castle's master. He was the 8th son. The sun was setting. Sven sat on the top of the hill where the shabby bandit gang was located. He wiped the undead calamity staff in his hand. He would stroke his neck occasionally as he waited quietly. There was a thick bandage wrapped around his neck. His 2 injuries had almost healed after he had eaten the Rainbow Phoenix chicken eggs that Black Moon Castle had given him. He still had the remaining eggs and silver tier armor. It's almost time. He had left a message for Black Moon Castle to look for him when they wanted to capture Lady Gluttony. He was confident that the other party would visit him. Not long after that, the mountain peak began to tremble, his eyes lit up. "They're here." However, his expression turned to shock. Thousands of magical beasts had gathered in front of the mountain. It almost made the peak impenetrable. Those magical beasts were at least bronze tier, and some of them were even silver tier. There were more than 5,000 of them, and some had men on their backs. Sven was about to go to them when he saw a flash of golden light in front of him. Watson rode down on the golden flash and threw dozens of heads in front of him. "Mr. Sven, we meet again. These are the heads from the bandit gangs nearby. Count them and see if the number matches with what you know." Chapter 109, The Great Crimes Conference. The Fury Soul Bandit Gang, the Vortex Bandit Gang, the Extreme Evil Bandit Gang, a total of 50 heads. Sven counted the heads on the ground in front of him. Those heads had threads condensed from light elemental combat aura. Their eyes were wide open, and some even had a terrified expression on their faces. It was as if they had seen something horrible when they were alive. After he counted several times, Sven was sure that he had calculated correctly. He stared at Watson with wide eyes, his face filled with disbelief. There were 50 bandit gang leaders. In other words, Watson had killed dozens of bandit gangs, which equated to a few thousand people. There were 100 or 200 bandit gangs in the entire Misty Forest. "Young Master Watson, I know all the bandit gang leaders. Other than those people, there are still some other bandits around the Misty Forest. It's just that there aren't many of them, so I don't know," Sven said weakly as he looked at the sky behind Watson. There were 20 Black Moon Knights on 2 winged ligers, as well as many powerful magical beasts around them. Tens of thousands of those magical beasts included more than 5,000 silver-tier magical beasts. That kind of power was much stronger than what Sven had seen in the Black Moon Castle the previous day. Had they kept their strength hidden from him? Sven felt his heart tremble. It was no wonder Black Moon Castle had dared to let him go and did not covet the undead calamity staff in his hands. That little thing was nothing compared to Black Moon Castle. "Mr. Sven, all bandits must die. I'll have to trouble you to lead the way later. Choose a magical beast you like to go with us." Watson smiled at Sven and stretched his hand outward. It was a very gentle tone, but it made Sven break out in cold sweat. All bandits must die. Was he not a bandit too? He must still be useful if Watson did not kill him yet. Would the young man do it after he had led them to their destination? His wish had not been fulfilled, so he could not die just yet. However, how could he deal with Black Moon Castle? He looked at the endless magical beasts around him. Their fierce eyes and the saliva that dripped down their fangs forced him to make up his mind. Perhaps there was only one thing he could do. Plop! With a muffled sound, Sven knelt in front of Watson. "Young Master Watson, I am willing to point out the location of the remaining bandit gang, but I have one condition. After this matter is over, I hope that young Master Watson can accept me into Black Moon Castle and let me be a guard in your residence. I will be extremely grateful for that." A mere bandit wants to join Black Moon Castle? Do you know how much innocent blood has been spilled on your hands? Black Moon Castle doesn't want people like you. Alan looked down from his liger and interrupted Sven's words with disdain. As expected, it did not work. Sven's expression was gloomy. That was the best idea he had. He needed strength to take revenge. The strongest strength he knew at the border was the Fairy Castle, followed by Black Moon Castle. The Count would definitely not help him, and Watson might not either. However, he only needed 1,000 silver-tier magical beasts to complete his quest for revenge. Unfortunately, Alan's words shattered his wish. He was only a dirty bandit. It was good enough that they did not shun him. Why would anyone kindly take him in? Alan saw Sven lowering his head and was about to say something when Watson waved his hand. "Alan, I don't think Mr. Sven is a bad man. If he sincerely wants to join Black Moon Castle, then I'll reluctantly accept him. I'll blame it on my generosity." "Really, young Master Watson, you're too kind," Alan complained unhappily as he echoed Watson's words. Sven raised his head excitedly. "Really? Young Master Watson, are you really going to take me in?" "Of course, but there is a price. After you become my subordinate, I want you to guard that mountain peak and continue to be the shabby bandit gang leader. I'll send a few of the Black Moon Knights to be your subordinate. You must take that opportunity to recruit the bandits nearby. From now on, there can only be one bandit gang at the border." Watson raised a finger. His voice was immature, but his words were very domineering. "Let those who obey me enjoy wealth and glory, and those who disobey me will die." "Young Master Watson, what do you mean?" Sven understood Watson's thoughts. He sucked in a breath of cold air. Even if he knew all the bandit gangs in the vicinity, he could not do everything at once. It was impossible for Watson to wipe out all the bandit gangs. Some might have escaped. They could occupy a mountain and create a new group. That was also why the border count could not wipe out the bandit gangs even if he sent people to surround them. Watson was ruthless. He attracted the bandits who could not be killed to his side so that they could become the most significant bandit leader. He controlled his subordinates and solved the root of the problem. That was something he did not dare to think or do. Indeed, the world belonged to young men, and he was already old. Sven sighed and knelt on one knee in front of Watson with heartfelt admiration. "I shall obey young Master Watson's orders." A little deeper in the misty forest, in the middle of 5 towering peaks, a woman in a gorgeous black dress and a ferocious rabbit mask floated along the iron chains that connected each peak. She was headed toward the highest peak in the center. "Lady Gluttony, the remaining 5 ladies have been waiting for you at the Great Sin Temple." When the woman floated to the top of the mountain, the gauze on the faces of the 2 maidservants swayed as they bowed their heads and spoke to her respectfully. "Very well. I'll go there now." Lady Gluttony giggled. Suddenly, she noticed something and asked, "By the way, why are there only 5 people? Shouldn't there be 6 besides me?" The maidservant said, "It seems that something has happened in Monty Town, so Lady Pride is currently dealing with it. She doesn't have time to come here." As expected of a woman who has been branded with the sin of pride. "She is really arrogant." The sound of licking came from under Lady Gluttony's mask. "I had thought with the gathering of the 7 great sins, I would have the chance to devour each of them. What a pity." Her gaze swept over the 2 maids. It caused them to shiver. Then, Lady Gluttony floated to a spiked temple in the middle of the mountain peak. The door was open. Among the stone pillars, there was a round table with 5 women sitting around it. The first seat and the third seat were empty. The rest of the seats were taken. Each of the women wore a different mask. When one counted the second seat to the last seat, the first woman had her head on a pillow as she drooled, and she wore a black wizard eye mask. The second woman had an ox horn mask, and she was quite plump. The third woman was dressed luxuriously with jewelry on her neck and ears, and she also had a mask made of gold. Then, the fourth woman was in a hooded robe, while the 5th person was a small girl. "Hey, 5 pieces of trash. Long time no see, are you all still alive?" Lady Gluttony walked toward those women quickly and greeted them warmly. Chapter 110. Attack on the Demoness Bandit Gang. "Gluttony, you'll die first before we do." The one who spoke was a plump woman in an angry ox horn mask. Her name was Lady Wrath, which corresponded to the wrath of the 7 great sins. Her strength was in the middle of the 7 great sins, and since she was on par with Lady Gluttony, the 2 of them always fought whenever they met. "Wrath, you're still the same. Every time you open your mouth, it's like you've eaten some gunpowder," Lady Gluttony chuckled. Her steps paused before she turned into a shadow and arrived in front of Lady Wrath swiftly. The rabbit head mask on her face flushed red. "Do you know that it's effortless to be killed just like that?" A cheerful smile spread out from under the mask as her hands clutched around Wrath's neck. "Teleportation? You've advanced to gold tier?" She asked the question with difficulty. The ox horn mask that she wore also squirmed. A powerful force poured into her body, and it caused her to stand up abruptly. She turned into a muscular giant that was over 5 meters tall and pushed Lady Gluttony away. "Don't worry," she said condescendingly. Each of the great sin masks had a magical spell attached to it. The spell that matched the Wraith's mask was Goliath. The higher the rage, the bigger her body's transformation. "I haven't advanced to gold tier yet, but I'll be there soon." Gluttony took a few steps backward from Wraith before she headed straight for the seat of honor. The Storm Bandit Gang and the Shabby Bandit Gang are well known as the 3 bandit gangs at the border with us, but their leaders were all idiots. Especially Vigar, though he tasted excellent. It's a pity that I didn't get to eat Sven. Otherwise, I would have been a gold tier warrior by now. "Gluttony, I heard about what happened to you. You've really caused a lot of trouble." The person who spoke was a woman dressed luxuriously and had jewelry all over her body. As she spoke, the jewelry collided and sounded like a wind chime. She held a few coins in her hand. Every time she tossed them upward, one of the coins would disappear, and her aura would also become stronger. Just like what greed said, gluttony, I know what you've done, the little girl at the last seat said. The young girl was in a pure white fox mask. There were not many patterns on it. Her chubby hands and legs and undeveloped body proved that she was only a little over 10 years old. According to the response from the people I control in the other bandit groups, Black Moon Castle led a team to the Misty Forest to exterminate the bandit gangs. It is said that they have mastered a magical ability to control the magical beasts. They can even control silver-tier magical beasts. Many bandits were torn into pieces before they could even see their shadows. The young girl seemed to be lamenting the tragic scene. She took a deep breath. Then, after she had calmed down, she continued to say, I reckon that the Black Moon Castle army will attack us soon. They would make a big move. Gluttony, this is because you decided to destroy some of the manors under their protection. Lust, please watch your words. Even if I didn't destroy those manors, do you really think that they won't come for us? Besides, Black Moon Castle killed so many of our people. I'm just returning the favor. Is there anything wrong with that? As she spoke, Lady Gluttony went to the first seat and was about to sit down. Bang! At that moment, the black-haired woman who had been sleeping in the second seat suddenly bounced from the pillow. A big snot bubble burst as she reached out to grab Lady Gluttony. Sloth, what are you doing? Gluttony's body trembled, and she wanted to sit down, but she did not move. That seat belongs to Pride. If you want to sit there, you'll have to defeat me. Sloth's voice was very pleasant, but she spoke very slowly and tiredly. Every time she said a few words, she would pause for a moment to catch her breath. Pride is not here. What's wrong with me sitting in the first seat? Anyway, I'm about to become a gold-tier warrior. When that time comes, I'll be on the same level as that old woman. All you silver-tier scum will have to listen to me, understand? Lady Gluttony sneered and broke free from Sloth's hand. Her words caused her companions to frown and stop what they were doing at the same time. The demoness bandit gang's rules were very simple. The strongest will get the final say, and their seats were arranged according to that. Lady Pride was their only gold-tier elite. If Lady Gluttony were to reach gold tier, then they would have to listen to her. Even if you were to reach gold tier, you're still no match for Pride, the woman who symbolized laziness said. That might not be the case. Gluttony spread her hands out confidently. I intentionally lured Black Moon Castle to attack the bandit gangs. According to my speculation, Black Moon Castle is very likely related to the border count. The young master of the castle, Watson, is most likely his illegitimate son. Once we catch him, we'll be able to control the border. Not only that, Black Moon Castle also has dozens of silver-tier warriors and even more silver-tier magical beasts. If I were to devour all of them, then I would be the strongest person in the world. Gluttony's mask gave her the ability to devour. If she were to consume something, she would be able to obtain all their powers, including their talent. The border count's child must be very talented in magic cultivation. Gluttony, don't forget our goal, which is to resurrect the demoness church and rebuild the mask of great sin. The reason we're hiding at the border is to avoid the attention of the kingdom's higher-ups. What if you make too much of a ruckus and people target us instead? The young girl said lustfully. So what? We've been hiding for a long time, and we've tried all kinds of ways to repair the mask. But in the end, the mask still can't be repaired, right? I think that all of you have been fooled by that arrogant old woman. If Black Moon Castle attacks us later, I can give you a part of the prey. Let's become stronger together. When that arrogant old woman comes back, we'll kill her. What do you think? How dare you? Sloth's tone became furious, and she was about to say something. Boom! At that moment, a loud sound came from outside the hall, and the whole mountain shook. Lady Gluttony said, "My food is finally here. If you disagree with me, just wait here." Then she flew out without hesitation. The remaining women looked at each other, they were speechless. What should we do now? What else can we do? The enemy is already here. Even if we disagree with Gluttony's methods, we can only go out and destroy them, Lady Greed said with her hands behind her back. Her tone was quite relaxed. The other party has quite many silver-tier magical beasts, the young girl reminded them lecherously. What's a silver-tier magical beast? We've been working at the border for so long, and we have a trump card that no mere silver-tier magical beast can compare. I am sure that all of you are clear on that, Lady Greed continued to speak. Since everyone was silent, it was clear that they had tacitly agreed. The golden mask on her face shone. It's time to activate that thing. The thing that was left behind by the god we believe in, the primordial demoness. Chapter 111, The Evil God Sculpture. On the 5 mountains where the demoness bandit gang was located, Watson was on the golden flash as he floated on the side of the central peak. He counted the magical beasts that he had fused. 20,000 bronze-tier magical beasts were on the ground. There were 5,000 silver-tier magical beasts as well as the 2 winged ligers. All of them circled the sky. Just like human warriors would develop combat aura wings when they reached silver tier, magical beasts would also grow wings when they reached silver tier. Those with wings might not necessarily be silver tier magical beasts, but silver tier magical beasts would definitely have wings. Young Master Watson, when are we going to attack? Alan led 20 Black Moon Knights. They were on 2 winged ligers, and they stayed beside Watson to protect him. Sven was next to him and a group of manor owners who were shouting loudly. Some of those manor owners were on the magical beasts, while some of the beasts held others. They were suffering unspeakably. Watson had led everyone to the hill where the shabby bandit gang was located. After they found Sven, they immediately returned to Sven's lead. They searched the misty forest and carried out carpet bombing. They wiped out all the bandit gang's strongholds around the misty forest. They had managed to wipe out at least 100 bandit gangs. The remaining bandit gangs were mostly useless. After they heard that Black Moon Castle would attack them, they had fled. They did not even bother to bring their treasures. The magical beasts that surrounded the demoness bandit gang's stronghold were covered in blood. As they had devoured many bandits, their eyes flashed with a bloodthirsty light. Alan, we're not in a hurry to attack. We'll just wait here. The demoness bandits gang won't be able to resist coming out by themselves. There's only one bandit gang left near Black Moon Castle. It'll be over after we clear them out. Watson chuckled and turned his head to look at some of the manor owners who were not far from him. Everyone, I brought you here because I wanted you to help me find Lady Gluttony. We have already fought in the misty forest and have yet to see any traces of her. This means that she has already returned to her lair. None of you have captured Lady Gluttony, so I can't give you any rewards. Young Master Watson, you must be joking. It has been our honor to come along and witness Black Moon Castle's heroic deeds. How can we ask for a reward? It's already our fortune to be able to come along and witness the heroic appearance of the Black Moon Castle. How can we still ask for rewards? Christine said. She was in gold tier armor, and she was on the back of a 2-winged liger. Her face was pale, as if she had just vomited. Christine is right. We can't help it that we're too weak. We're lucky that young Master Watson didn't punish us. The other manor owner, Morgan, spoke up as well. After he said that, he vomited and almost fell off the liger. He was not like Christine, who was protected by gold tier armor. Along the way, the rapid flight of the silver tier magical beast almost took his life. He was a hot-tempered person, but after he saw Watson's ruthless methods against the bandits, he no longer dared to voice his opinion. Lady Gluttony had only injured a few Black Moon Knights, but Watson had wanted to destroy all the bandit gangs, including the demoness bandit group. If he were to anger Watson, would he not end up in a miserable state? Morgan still remembered the scene a few hours ago when Watson had controlled tens of thousands of magical beasts to infiltrate the bandit gangs. There were only a few hundred pitiful bandits, and there were also some bronze-tier elites. Unfortunately, those silver-tier magical beasts crushed them like minced meat. There were even worse things. Some bandits were asleep in caves. Before they knew what had happened, the mountain peak had been shattered by the magic from those tens of thousands of magical beasts and buried them forever. Thanks to Black Moon Castle, all the bandit gangs nearby have been wiped out. We won't have to be afraid when winter comes. Yes, it's safe now. This is the biggest reward that Black Moon Castle has given us. The other manor owners also chimed in. They were not fools. They knew why Watson had insisted on bringing them along when he wiped out the bandit gangs. It was not only to search for one person, but he also wanted to intimidate them. Watson had succeeded. They knew that the magical beasts were their teammates. Most of them wanted to pee their pants when they stood beside those beasts. They were also disappointed when they saw their guards trembling beside the beasts. They looked at the Black Moon Castle guards. All of them were silver-tier warriors who had remained calm in the face of danger. Then, they looked at their subordinates. They were useless even though they were iron and bronze tier. They could not be compared to those Black Moon Castle guards. While they thought about that, their guards were also looking at them. They wondered why their bosses could not equip them with silver-tier equipment and magical beasts like Watson. If they had known that Black Moon Castle was recruiting people 2 months ago, they would have gone too. Boom! While everyone was lost in their thoughts, a rumble echoed from the mountain top occupied by the demoness bandit gang. Then, a woman in a gorgeous black robe and a rabbit mask flew toward them. She flapped her pitch-black combat aura wings on her back as she stood face to face with Watson. Then, she said, "Well, isn't this Black Moon Castle's young master? We haven't seen each other in 2 days, did you miss me? I miss you so much that I want to eat you up. Lady Gluttony, you used cruel methods to slaughter people from many manors, including the Vermilion Manor. I'm here to seek justice for the dead. If you surrender, I will give you a fair trial. Otherwise, you can only repent in hell." Watson put both his hands next to his lips to amplify his voice. A fair trial? Are you kidding? Isn't this a world where the strong prey on the weak? I'm strong, so I can plunder as I please. If you're weak, then you can only die. Lady Gluttony had her hands behind her back. Her tone was calm, but her voice traveled far. It seems like I have nothing to say to you. Then, Watson waved his hand abruptly. He had given her a chance. The magical beasts around a few mountain peaks let out an angry roar and charged at Lady Gluttony. The first to charge into the sky were dozens of silver-tier storm goshawk that carried a storm that spanned dozens of meters. Behind them were the 2 winged ligers, followed by various magical beasts, like winged bears and monsters that looked like pterosaurs. All of them opened their mouths and shot beams of combat aura with different elements. The colorful streams of light streaked across the sky and outlined a magnificent flame. It even covered the setting sun. Everyone could not open their eyes. When faced with such a terrifying attack, even a fully armed gold-tier warrior would be torn into pieces the moment they stood in the combat aura storm, let alone Lady Gluttony. As expected, the light devoured Lady Gluttony rather quickly. No parts of her remain. I feel like there's no need for us to take action. Young Master Watson will be able to take care of them by himself, Alan said with ease as he spread his hands outward. He did not even know how to lose the fight. 5,000 silver-tier magical beasts could drown the Lady Gluttony with a single spit, not to mention that those beasts could use magic that was comparable to battle techniques. What kind of effect would 5,000 silver-tier attacks have when stacked? They might be able to pierce through the sky. Wait, something seems wrong. Watson also thought that his opponent had died. Suddenly, an ominous premonition arose in his heart. Well, it's quite a strong attack. Unfortunately, it's useless. The light dissipated. Lady Gluttony still hovered in the sky. She was unharmed. The mask on her face suddenly opened its mouth. It revealed teeth that were stuck to her flesh. It looked very frightening. The 5 mountains beneath her shook, and the rocks fell off to reveal 5 identical sculptures that emitted a dark light. The light connected and condensed into a female phantom that was hundreds of meters tall in mid-air, and it protected her within it. Chapter 112. Petrified Demonic Eyes Fusion. What is that thing? The men stared at the sky as they sucked in a breath of cold air. Even Watson's expression changed as he looked at the enormous female phantom in the sky. The female phantom was hundreds of meters tall, and she was dressed in pitch-black clothes. Her clothes were engraved with swollen eyeballs that were several meters in circumference. They rolled around on the woman's clothing. It gave everyone an uncomfortable feeling. There were 7 heads on the phantom, and each one was different. Some had 1 ear, some only had 1 eye, and others only had a mouth. She looked very strange. The woman's body was not human either. The upper half was the image of a plump woman, and the lower half was the tail of a snake. When Watson stared at the eyeballs on the woman's clothes, he felt a piercing pain in his eyes. A gray mist climbed onto his palm. Crack! With a soft sound, a small piece of gray dead skin appeared on his palm. It felt like a rock. The dead skin shattered and turned into dust that fell to the ground with a light touch as it revealed a bleeding wound. Ah, my eyes. I can't see anything. Not far away from Watson, a guard from another manor covered his eyes and rolled on the body of the 2-winged liger before he rolled over it. When he was in midair, they heard a cracking sound from the body of that guard. A hardened layer formed on his body, and it quickly spread. Within a few seconds, the guard had turned into a statue. He was still in the position where he covered his eyes. Then, he fell from a height of several hundred meters. What's going on? Why did my arm turn into stone? A manor owner on the back of a silver-tier magical beast watched in horror as his right hand turned to stone. A worried guard beside him had to support him. However, when he touched his arm, it immediately shattered and turned to dust, and the rest of his arm was bleeding. After he was stunned for a few seconds, the manor owner finally reacted and cried out in pain. "Christine, quick, lend us your armor." Morgan and Jack, whose bodies were partially petrified, shouted as they guided their magical beasts toward her. Everyone else was petrified, too, except for Christine, who wore a gold-tier armor, and so she was immune to that state. She was still fine at that time. "Your men, have some backbone. What are you trying to do? Also, which one of you is touching me? Are you shameless?" When she saw the two of them jump down from the magical beasts and hug themselves like sloths, Christine slapped them. As they covered their red and swollen cheeks, Morgan and Jack looked at the hardened areas on their bodies. They did not disappear or expand further. They sighed in relief. It was better to lose their dignity than their lives. It was not only the manor owners, but even the Black Moon Knights and the magical beasts in the sky had suffered some degree of petrification. "It's bad. That thing is the projection of the evil god, the primordial demoness. She was at Starlight Tier when she was alive. Everyone, don't look at her eyes. Her eyes contain some strange magic. Our bodies will be petrified if we look at her eyes," Sven shouted anxiously as he covered his eyes with his hands. The strength levels in that world were divided into iron, bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, starlight, and king. Humans could usually achieve gold tier while those exceptional ones could reach platinum and diamond tier. Anything beyond that belonged to the god's domain. Starlight. It meant to shine like the stars and look down on all living things from above. Elites in that realm were said to be able to communicate with the heavens and earth, and they could also destroy an entire country with a wave of their hands. Since they were overly powerful, many ancient Starlight Tier elites were worshipped as gods, and the primordial demoness happened to be one of them. The demoness cult could flourish in the kingdom because it was something left behind by a Starlight Tier elite. Even if it were just an afterimage, it was not something that any silver and gold tier elites could provoke. Sven's voice did not travel far in the chaotic crowd, and many people and magical beasts had already turned into statues. They had fallen from the sky. No matter what level they were, even if they were silver tier champions, they would not be able to resist after the magic hit them. They could only watch as they turned into sculptures. 5 of the Black Moon Knights did not notice the warning, and the spell also hit them. They had turned into rocks. Fortunately, Watson reacted quickly and guided the magical beasts to carry the sculptures of the knights. The beasts flew into the distance, so those knights did not fall into pieces. Watson had also looked into the primordial demoness eyes. He felt a trace of offensive aura in his body that constantly ate his flesh and blood as it turned his internal organs into lifeless stones. Fortunately, he was a gold-tier champion. His vital energy and blood were exuberant, so he could still withstand it for the time being. However, he could not continue to do so in the long run. Just as he thought about how to clear that aura, the chaotic elemental source of magic in his body vibrated and absorbed the demoness aura. At the same time, the sound of a system notification rang in his ears. High-level energy detected for fusion. Do you wish to fuse? Of course, Watson answered without any hesitation. That was a rare system notification for fusion. As soon as he finished speaking, Watson heard a buzz before he felt the magic source in his body vibrate. It emitted a strong and engaging force. Not far away, the eyeballs on the primordial demoness projection stayed to move as they looked in different directions. At that moment, the eyeballs seemed to have sensed something. They looked in Watson's direction, first with doubt, then with shock, and finally with fear. Hundreds of eyeballs spun as if they wanted to break free, but in the end, they could not do that. Wisps of gray air gushed from them. It fused with the air before it flowed into Watson's body. Well, to be precise, it was the chaotic source of magic that had fused into his body. Congratulations, Master, for successfully fusing with high-level energy. The storage capacity of chaotic elemental magic has expanded to the equivalent of 2 platinum tier elites. Master, you have obtained an additional gold tier spell, the Petrification Magic Eye. When used, the opponent can be petrified. Depending on the magic, the degree and the time of petrification will be different. Petrification can also be removed on its own initiative. Watson was pleasantly surprised. He did not expect to learn a gold tier spell when he fused with the Primordial Demoness aura. If I can fuse with the entire Primordial Demoness projection, will it make me stronger? Perhaps unimaginably strong. He raised his head and stared at the Primordial Demoness. The eyes on her clothes were mostly closed. Watson's eyes burned with passion. He was there to steal the Demoness bandit gang's great sin mask. It seemed like he found another purpose. Other people might think that the Primordial Demoness projection was a terrible disaster, but Watson thought it was a treasure. How delicious. It's been a long time since I've had such a good meal. It is rare that someone would drive silver tier magical beasts my way. It's like sending me food. Lady Gluttony cooperated with the Primordial Demoness projection as she continued her wanton slaughter in the sky. When she saw a silver tier magical beast with half a petrified body, she could smash the hardened part with a punch. She threw the rest of flesh and blood into the mask and bit into it. Her mask was a bottomless pit, and she would not have enough to eat no matter how much she ate. In only a few minutes, she had swallowed more than 100 silver tier magical beasts. She wiped the blood that had flowed down her neck. Her aura had increased tremendously. She had advanced from silver to gold tier in one fell swoop. The Demoness cult is something that the evil gods Primordial Demoness had left behind. They still have things that they should be proud of, for example, the magical array that summoned the Primordial Demoness. As long as the blood sacrifice continues, it will be able to increase its strength. The Demoness bandit gang has been lurking at the border for nearly 10 years. They used the winter to sacrifice hundreds of thousands of living things. Now, they have reached platinum tier. Even if the border count were there, he would not be able to gain any benefits, let alone the inconsequential Black Moon Castle. Chapter 113, Fusion of Platinum Tier Magic. As she looked into the distance, Lady Gluttony noticed the magical beasts that surrounded her continued to fall. Half of the 5,000 silver tier magical beasts had quickly disappeared, including hundreds of double-winged ligers. Most of the 10,000 bronze tier magical beasts were also in a petrified state. She turned her head to glance at the Primordial Demoness projection behind her, and she noticed the eyeballs on her clothes continued to close. Lady Gluttony clicked her tongue. The energy is used up so quickly, it's much faster than I expected. How unreliable. Anyway, I've eaten enough. The magical beasts are no longer a threat. At worst, I'll just kill all the people in front of me and restore the energy for the magical array. She licked her lips under the mask. The jet-black combat aura wings on Lady Gluttony's back expanded several times as she headed straight for Watson. To catch a thief, one must first catch the leader. Once Watson was captured, his guards would not be able to resist. Young Master Watson, leave this to us. You should leave quickly. Alan controlled the two-winged liger as he tried his best not to look at the Primordial Demoness eyes, and he protected Watson in front of him. One of his arms had already hardened, and the petrification spread at a speed that made his expression appear somewhat tragic. Young Master Watson, it seems like I won't be able to make it today. When you return, you can give my manor to those who need it. Oh, yes, young Master Watson, I've just recruited a group of handmaidens, and I haven't touched them yet. If you like them, then please, take them. Also, the manor needs to be cleaned once every 3 days. Let the more meticulous people do it. Don't damage the expensive paintings and vases in the room. Young Master, also, I had to tell you. When he realized that Alan was about to continue, Watson was speechless. He waved his hand hurriedly. Stop, you're not dead yet. I'm not dead yet, but I might be soon. Alan was crying. A few of his teammates had been petrified in front of him. If it were not for the gold tier armor on his body that protected him, he would have been petrified as well. The armor did not have an abnormal resistance like Christine's. As he faced death, he did not feel much fear in his heart. Instead, he thought that it was a pity to have such good equipment on him. If he were to turn into stone, Watson would have fused them for him for nothing. Stop talking. Watson did not say anything more. He activated the gold tier spell he had just obtained, the petrification magic eyes. His azure blue eyes turned green and gray. His pupils had disappeared, only the whites of his eyes remained. It seemed to contain a layer of chaos. A faint shadow of a huge eyeball appeared behind him. It looked directly at Alan's arm. The hardened area disappeared gradually. Alan hugged his arm and cried, and he said, "When I die, let List lead the guards. He is more stable and opinionated than me. It's a good thing that he did not come today." Watson looked angry and amused. "Take a good look at yourself. You're fine now. Young master, you don't have to comfort me. I'm telling the truth." When he saw Watson's serious expression, Alan looked down and realized that the petrified marks on his arm had disappeared. Then, he tried to move his arm, and it was so flexible that he could even touch his back. He was overjoyed. "I feel great. Young master, how did you do it? That is too magical." He had thought that he would die. He did not expect Watson could undo the magic from the primordial demoness. He was Watson, indeed. What had happened? The gluttonous demoness had rushed to a spot not far from Watson. She stared at the scene in front of her, but her brain could not function properly. The primordial demoness was part of an evil god. Even a trace of her afterimage was at platinum tier. She was not affected because she had the Great Sin Mosque's protection, but how did the youth in front of him survive that? "Forget it, I don't care. I'll know after I eat him." The rabbit head mask on Lady Gluttony's face squirmed as she opened her bloody mouth. She had wanted to spare Watson's life, but at that time, she wanted his life. After he undid Alan's petrification, Watson heaved a sigh of relief. The gold tier spell that he used did not consume too much stamina. With his strength, he could cast it many times. It was enough to cure all the petrified people if their bodies did not shatter. Just as he was about to go and save them, he heard a piercing sound. Lady Gluttony flew in front of him with an intense combat aura and struck her palm at him. Illusory skulls appeared on Lady Gluttony's palm. They opened their mouths and screamed. The sound was ear-piercing. The skulls gathered and turned into a pitch-black mouth that was about to swallow Watson. "If you want to touch young Master Watson, you'll have to go through me first." Before Watson could make his move, Alan had raised the golden glove in his right hand. It was covered with water elemental combat aura, and he threw a vicious punch at Lady Gluttony. Bang! With a muffled sound, the two-winged liger with Alan broke into two on the spot. He spat out a mouthful of blood and was driven further backward. His face was filled with disbelief as he stared at endless sea-black blood-thorny gloves. That was a gold-tier weapon that Watson had given him, and one of it had been damaged. "You've overestimated yourself." With a cold snort, Lady Gluttony continued to drift toward Watson's direction. She was already a gold-tier warrior, and with the Great Sin Mask that gave her the ability to devour, she would only become stronger as she fought. So powerful. Watson's expression changed, and he activated and used the petrification magic eyes on Lady Gluttony. A gold-tier spell enveloped her. It covered her body with a layer of greenish-gray stone shell. That change only lasted for a moment before it quickly dissipated. "Using the primordial demoness power to deal with me, aren't you overestimating yourself? However, you were able to steal the primordial demoness power. I'm really getting more and more interested in you. The petrification magic eyes does not affect you. What's that about?" Watson patted the spatial bag he carried with him, took out the heart of the sea staff, and began to chant. "Water elements that flow endlessly in the world, please listen to my call, turn into a giant that can trample over everything, an indestructible giant. Gold tier magic, humanoid automine giant." As his voice lowered, 110-meter-tall giants appeared beside Watson. Their bodies were formed by a sky-blue water curtain that exuded a terrifying might. Those water giants raised the barrels in their hands the moment they appeared and fired water mine cannonballs at Lady Gluttony. The explosion formed a hurricane that caused the trees on the 5 mountains to shake. However, it could not move Lady Gluttony. The water giants rushed toward her and disintegrated to generate an even stronger explosion. However, they were all devoured by the black combat aura that was around Lady Gluttony. "It's useless. No matter what you do, it will become part of my strength if you're not above gold tier. If you have any other moves, just use them. After all, this is the last moment of your life." Lady Gluttony giggled. Her tone is contemptuous. "That's only what you think. Watson closed his eyes for a short while and then reopened them very quickly. He seemed to have made up his mind. "Alan, take everyone and leave." "But young master," the injured Alan floated to the side. He was a little hesitant. "Go." Watson gave his command. Alan gritted his teeth. He could only control the magical beasts and lead the remaining Black Moon Knights and the other manor owners to retreat. Not bad. Letting your subordinates leave, even at the cost of your own life. You are a good leader. Lady Gluttony watched his actions with interest. "No, you're overthinking it." At that moment, Watson also smiled. "I didn't let them leave because I wanted to sacrifice myself. I am afraid that my powerful magic might hurt them. There's no point in saying that now. You won't be able to hear it soon anyway." As he spoke, Watson activated the system fusion. He had 3 gold tier spells, namely the humanoid Automine Giant, the Silver Serpent on the Raging Sea, and the Petrification Magic Eyes. Well, he wanted to fuse those 3 spells. System, activate the fusion system. Congratulations, Master, for successfully fusing 3 gold tier spells. You have obtained a platinum tier spell, the Deep Sea Dragon's Breath. Chapter 114. Obtaining a Great Sin Mask. Platinum tier spell, Deep Sea Dragon's Breath. Extremely powerful, able to break through the defense of platinum tier elites. The breath is highly corrosive and has the effect of ignoring resistance. It cannot be removed after being poisoned. After he heard the system notification, Watson opened his arms, and a huge crack suddenly appeared in the sky behind him. The crack spanned hundreds of meters as if it were connected to another world. Endless sea water spilled over, it was black, and a huge yellowish-brown ball appeared in the water. "What's that?" Alan was fleeing with the people from Black Moon Castle and the other manors when they felt a strong magical fluctuation from behind them. Everyone turned around and looked, and they were somewhat surprised to see what Watson had summoned. It had creeped them out. After they flew for hundreds of meters, they turned around and realized that Watson had summoned a terrifying creature. Its yellowish-brown pupils were like mirrors that reflected the world, and the eyes were bigger than a palace. It also had some dark-colored scales, and the 2 ferocious dragon horns on the top of its head shot straight into the sky. That was the head of a deep-sea magic dragon. In that world, dragons were a very rare and powerful race. An adult dragon had at least the strength of a gold-tier warrior, and some of the stronger ones were even comparable to platinum-tier or diamond-tier elites. The deep-sea magic dragon was one of the more powerful ones. They lived in a place deeper than the ocean, where ordinary creatures could not even go. The moment Watson's magic was activated, the primordial demoness Phantom, who had been guarding Lady Gluttony, seemed to sense some danger and swayed a little. Die. Watson felt the source of the chaotic elemental magic in his body, and it had drained half the energy of the 2 platinum tier spells. That proved that the magic was genuinely platinum tier. "You know platinum tier magic?" Lady Gluttony's voice trembled as she pointed at Watson. She had thought that Watson was the border count's son. She was already shocked to learn that he was a gold tier mage at that age. She had not expected that Watson had actually reached platinum tier. When had anyone heard of a 10-year-old platinum tier mage? There was no one like him in the history of the entire kingdom for hundreds of years. Lady Gluttony turned around with fear in her heart and used her combat aura wings to leave swiftly. The great sin mask that she wore, Gluttony, allowed her to devour things that were weaker than her. However, there was a limit to the number of things she could consume every day. Once she exceeded the limit, she would explode and die because she could not withstand the power. A platinum tier power was something that she could not withstand. However, before she could run too far, the deep-sea dragon had already opened its huge fanged mouth. Its huge gills opened up and set off huge waves in another world. A huge magical array was formed in front of the crack. There were 8 rings connected, and they condensed into a pitch-black water column that shot out from the dragon's mouth. The power was so great that it seemed like it would poke a hole in the sky. The primordial demoness opened her arms and tried to protect Lady Gluttony. Crack. However, the primordial demoness projection did not last for even a second before it shattered into a light shadow. The black tide that stretched for an unknown number of meters swept across the area. Then, finally, it touched the 5 mountains, and 2 of the peaks collapsed. The demoness statue carved on the mountain in the distance also collapsed, and the mysterious power attached to it had disappeared. No. Lady Gluttony looked at the black tide that crashed upon them like a mountain. Her face was full of despair, and her voice was spread into the whistling wind. Unfortunately, she could not do anything. She could not even spread her combat aura to her body. She could only watch as the black tide drowned her. The black tide did not stop after it took Lady Gluttony. Instead, it accelerated and crashed onto the ground and corroded a black lake that was hundreds of meters wide. The black water bubbled, and everything in it melted, even the rocks. Roar! After it spat a mouthful of breath, the deep-sea dragon did not seem satisfied. Instead, it pressed its head against the crack as if it wanted to come out from within it. Watson could feel a fish-scented hot wind from behind him, and it caused his hair to stand on end. He immediately cut off the magic, and the crack behind him shrank gradually equals. The deep-sea dragon's breath was too powerful. Who knew what kind of disaster it would cause if its main body were released to the world? Furthermore, his magic would not be able to support the deep-sea dragon if it were to come out from the hole. The deep-sea dragon roared urgently when it sensed that the hole had become smaller. Then, suddenly, it moved its head from the spot. Watson had just sighed in relief before he saw mountain-like claws slapped against the crack and caused endless waves to pour. Watson spat out a mouthful of blood. The shirt on his body changed between his black armor and his ordinary clothes. The crack quickly closed again, and the deep-sea dragon disappeared amidst its unwilling roar. I didn't expect that the fused platinum tier spell would be so dangerous. Watson flew backward as he wiped the blood from his lips. Unfortunately, the spell he cast had affected him. Fortunately, he was a gold tier warrior. Otherwise, that claw would have taken his life. I didn't expect that I would get a platinum tier spell after only fusing 3 gold tier spells. He thought that he would need at least 10 gold tier spells to fuse a platinum tier spell. After all, the higher the spell level, the more difficult it would be to fuse it. It must have been the incomplete spell, Silver Serpent on the Raging Sea. That spell was perhaps even more mysterious than he had imagined. Fortunately, even though there's a price to pay, I have also gained a lot too. Watson took a deep breath and waved the staff in his hand. A dull rabbit mask wrapped in combat aura appeared before him. Silver tier special item. Great Sin Mask, Gluttony. Effect. Able to block attacks from gold tier elites. Side effect. The user's emotions will become very volatile after wearing the mask. Additional effects. Devour. For those who are weaker than the user can devour the user's flesh and blood to turn it into their own power. There is a limit to that effect. Additional skills. Protection of the Evil God. Not affected by Evil God type spells. Your combat power within the Evil God's domain will be doubled. When he looked at the attributes that had appeared in front of him, Watson clicked his tongue. It is as expected of fragments from a platinum tier mask. A silver tier warrior can withstand the attacks of a gold tier elite. Furthermore, the additional effect is to devour others and turn them into your own power. It is somewhat similar to the fusion system. Of course, the Gluttony mask has an upper limit to its ability. It cannot be compared to the system at all. As he stroked the mask in his hand, Watson put it on his face. The mask immediately began to squirm, but it adapted to his face perfectly. The rabbit's mouth, which had been wide open, was half closed. Flesh and blood that were stuck to its teeth had disappeared entirely. It had looked clean. At the same time, Watson felt a strong sense of hunger in his stomach. It made him feel like a person who had been hungry for 3 days, and he needed to eat something urgently. Is that the side effect of the Gluttony mask? Watson wanted to find something to test the other abilities of the mask. At that moment, 5 women rushed from the 5 mountains. They were all in masks, and their eyes looked very cold through the masks. The Gluttony mask. Looks like Gluttony is dead. That fool. We told her that she shouldn't just do as she pleased, but it seems like she refused to listen to us. That's just great. That mask belongs to the Demoness Bandit Gang. Master of Black Moon Castle, hand it over, and we'll spare your life. Chapter 115. 1 against 5. Watson stared at the 5 women in front of him. The woman in front wore a horned mask, and her words were the most aggressive. A woman in a black eye mask stood behind her, and she laid on a pillow as her body hovered with her bottom pointed upward. Bubbles popped from her nose from time to time. No one knew if she was asleep or it was all a ruse. The other 3 women included one who wore a lot of jewelry, one covered in a black hooded robe, and one who looked very young. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. According to Father, there are 7 great sin masks. There are 5 people here with 5 pieces. In addition to the gluttony mask on my face, it means that all the masks are here except for the pride mask. Watson was a little happy when he thought of that. He had wondered about how he would get the other masks, but those people had gone to him instead. Without any hesitation, Watson charged toward the ox-horned woman who was closest to him. As he did that, he took a look at the attributes of the mask on the other party's face. Silver tier special item. Great Sin Mask, Wrath. Effect. Able to block the attacks of gold tier elites. After wearing it, the host's emotions will become very volatile. Additional effects. Anger. The more angry one is, the higher one's combat strength. The disadvantage is that one will lose a certain amount of rationality. Giant transformation. Allows one to transform into a giant, changing according to the degree of anger. Additional skills. Evil God's Protection. It looked like it had the same attributes as the Gluttony Mask, with some additional effects. Gluttony could devour, while Wrath could transform into a giant. As Watson pondered the 5 women in front of him, they also sized him up with conflict expressions on their faces. They saw how Watson's Platinum tier spell had killed Lady Gluttony. She had disappeared entirely, and the original magical array carved onto a few of the peaks had been destroyed as well. That had taken them more than 10 years to accumulate. They had not dared to venture outside when they realized that Watson could cast Platinum tier spells. However, they did not expect the same spell would harm Watson's body either. He breathed unevenly as he hovered in the air. He could not even stand properly. That was obviously a good opportunity for them to add insult to their opponent's injury. Plus, they could not let the Great Sin Mask fall into others' hands. So, they decided to charge forward. That young man is a powerful mage. His close combat strength is not that strong. I will have to rely on my close combat ability to win. Lady Wrath's body expanded and turned into a giant that was more than 10 meters tall with that thought in mind. The ox horn mask on her face distorted gradually as thick smoke flowed from her nostrils. A massive pair of flesh-colored wings on her back flapped gently as it drove her to throw a giant fist at Watson, and with one punch, it shattered the air. Watson did not dodge the incoming attack. He looked straight at the deep black combat aura that covered the fist. He raised his eyelids, and his pupils disappeared into a greenish-gray color as a huge greenish-gray eye appeared behind him. The gods have changed, and the stars have changed. Only the ancient earth has not changed. Please grant me the power to seal all things. Gold tier spell, petrification magic eyes. Stupid. You're too stupid. That kind of magic does not affect me at all. Lady Wrath smiled mockingly. The Great Sin Mask had a natural resistance to similar evil god spells, especially the petrification magic eyes. It did not affect her at all. In the next moment, her fist could land on Watson's face to blow his head off. At that moment, Fury heard a whistling sound from above her head. 2 clouds that stretched for 100 meters swooshed down on her. It looked like Watson did not mean to petrify her, it was those clouds above her. When she saw cloud-shaped boulders, Lady Wrath used her hands to try to stop them. Bang, bang, 2 muffled sounds echoed as she managed to tear those boulders apart. As she was about to turn to continue with her attack on Watson, her opponent had disappeared. I'm here, a voice echoed from behind her. Watson stretched his hand out and pressed on her back. Devour, activate. With a swoosh, it sucked the giant's flesh and blood, which was the embodiment of Lady Wrath's anger. Then, Watson pulled her mask off forcefully. He saw a pretty face with short yellow hair and exquisite facial features. She still had traces of anger in her. From now on, this mask is mine. Watson grabbed the Wrath mask, turned around, and flew away. Give me back my mask. The woman who symbolized anger touched her face, gritted her teeth, and charged at Watson again. The other women went with her. Use 100 gold coins to strengthen it. Use 1,000 gold coins to strengthen it greatly. The woman who symbolized greed took out many gold coins from her bosom and sprinkled them downward. When the gold coins touched the air, they turned into a golden light, merged with Lady Wrath's anger, and increased her aura. She immediately arrived in front of Watson. She raised her fist furiously. It was covered with dark elemental combat aura. Since she had lost her mask, Her attacks were much weaker, so Watson did not bother with her. He was only interested in the young girl in the fox mask. She had also rushed in front of him and laughed at him. It sounded like a silver bell. Do you think I'm pretty? In an instant, scenes of countless beautiful naked women flashed in front of his eyes. Watson even saw Wendy and Capella in those images. He knew that it was a hallucination. Then, the black-haired woman who was sleeping on the pillow had also arrived. She raised a hand, pointed at him, and said, "Sleep." A deep sense of drowsiness enveloped Watson. It made him want to close his eyes. Roar! At that critical moment, a beastly roar echoed. The golden flash had kept its distance so that it would be easier for Watson to release his magic. However, it had flown back. Its lion's head opened its mouth and shot more than 10 meters of gold tier magic that looked like sunlight, and the sheep's head shook slightly as a thick green poisonous fog spread outward. The demoness bandit gang members who were close to Watson had to move away. Phew, that was close. I almost got hit. Golden Flash was a gold tier magical beast. With its presence, Watson waved his Heart of the Sea staff to set up layers of mind cannonballs around him. Those women could not get near him at all. Come on, young Master Watson. You're the best. Alan hovered in midair nearby. He waved his fists without getting close. Aren't you the Black Moon Knights captain? Your master is fighting with all his might, and you're here to watch the show? Sven stared at Alan with a strange expression. He had heard about the rumors that surrounded the demoness bandit gang, so he knew to stay away. He was not affected by the petrification spell. It's okay. That's because you don't understand our young master. He is very powerful. If I go there, it will only hinder him and affect his performance. As Alan spoke, he gave a thumbs up to Watson, who had removed the white fox mask from the young girl's face. It is just as I've expected. He had managed to get the third mask in such a short time. I reckon that he'll be able to obtain all of them in a moment. My respect for the young master is really like an endless river. How could a person be so shameless? Sven frowned darkly. I admit that young Master Watson's strength is great. However, it is useless for him to snatch the great sin masks. Those masks can only be used to their full potential by someone who has been acknowledged by the evil god and has mastered the dark elemental combat aura. It still needs to be reassembled. At most, it is a weapon that is between gold and silver tier. He did not mean to strike a low blow, it was the truth. Alan glanced at him with a strange expression. Reassemble? You still don't know young master very well. He can even use junk to create silver or even gold tier equipment. Those evil god masks in his hands, well, who knows what they will look like. As the two of them talked, a blinding light appeared from afar. Then, they heard the command. Fuse it. The ox horn and the white fox masks in Watson's hand disappeared at the same time. It fused into his face as the rabbit head mask that he wore suddenly changed. The carving changed from a rabbit to a terrifying beast that was completely black. It had horns and only one eye. Chapter 116, Internal Strife. Congratulations, Master, for successfully fusing 3 Great Sin Masks. You have obtained a gold tier Great Sin Mask. The system notification sounded in Watson's ears, and he saw that the mask's attributes had changed. Gold tier special item. Great Sin Mask, incomplete. Effects. Able to resist attacks from gold tier elites. Side effect. The user's emotions will become very volatile after wearing it. Additional effects. Devour, Delicious Touch, Rage, Giant Transformation. Advanced Charm. Possess the ability to confuse the mind and control others. Affinity. Greatly increase one's charm when facing a member of the opposite sex. Additional skills. The Evil God's Protection. Death Ray. Emit a dark elemental combat aura from the mask that can cause one's life force to dissipate, comparable to a gold tier warrior's full strength attack. Just as I expected of a mask left behind by the evil god. The effect of gold tier equipment is already comparable to a peak gold tier warrior. If I can fuse more masks, I imagine that the power will be even stronger. Watson was already looking forward to the ability of the fused mask. At the same time, the 5 members of the demoness bandit gang were shocked. Did you see that? Greed, who was in charge of buffing her teammates, asked softly. I think I saw it. The second person who spoke was Wrath. She rubbed her beautiful eyes. He fused the Great Sin Masks? Well, it might not be true fusion. Maybe he just put the mask together forcibly. It's not like we haven't done that before. The young woman, who wore the white fox mask, snorted in dissatisfaction. Behind her, Sloth, who was floating in the air, did not speak. Instead, she only listened to her teammates' discussions, but the aura on her body was different from before that. The Demoness Church's mission had always been to put the Great Sin masks together to restore its glory. Whoever could put it together would be the Church's successor. Do you still want to fight? When the mask changed, Watson's mentality also changed significantly. Sometimes he felt hungry, sometimes he felt outraged, and sometimes he was worried if he was not handsome enough. The violent fluctuations of emotions disturbed his mind. He knew that those were the side effects of the Great Sin masks. Nevertheless, Watson resisted them. He hooked his finger at the people in front of him. The horn on the 3-in-1 mask he wore on his face began to flicker with black light. Its only turbid eye turned, and the hair on those who saw that stood on end. Why do I feel like that person has succeeded in fusing Great Sin masks? The blonde-haired woman said greedily and suspiciously as the mask on her face flashed with light. I feel as if his mask has a kind of gravity that's attracting the greed mask on my face to break away. I can also feel the same aura as the primordial demoness from his mask. Whether or not the fusion is successful, we'll know once we try it. Lady Sloth spoke right before she charged straight at Watson and spread her invisible arms behind her. The arms pierced through the air before they wrapped around Watson's body. It contracted tightly. The arms also grabbed Watson's throat in an attempt to break his neck. The invisible arm had at least a few thousand caddies of strength. It could even break a steel plate effortlessly. The sloth mask could turn an attack into an invisible one. It would make it impossible for others to detect it. A human's deepest fear would always originate from the unknown. Therefore, even though the sloth was only a silver-tier elite, her overall ability was not much weaker than a gold-tier warrior. She was also the second strongest member of the Demoness bandit gang. She was behind Pride, who was not there that day. Is that all you have? The power on his body felt like 10,000 caddies, but Watson did not feel any pain. That was because the one-horned mask on his face ate all the power that attacked him. All he had in his heart was endless anger. He was mad at himself, but he was also angry at Lady Sloth's weakness. Since you are so weak, don't blame me for being harsh. Activate the mask skill, Death Ray. The turbid eye on the mask suddenly burst with colorful light. The beam was as thick as an arm. It hit the invisible arm that was wrapped around his body. The invisible arm then turned colorful and became visible to the naked eye. Then, it withered gradually along with the mask on Sloth's face. The mask cracked open from the middle. It revealed a pair of pure white pupils. The eyelashes were also white. They looked confused. I did not expect the mask to shatter. It's all right, fuse it for me. After the mask on Sloth's face shattered, it turned into 2 rays of white light before they headed toward Watson's face at the fastest speed. The 3-in-1 mask on his face immediately turned into a 4-in-1 mask, and the unicorn-shaped pattern began to change. The turbid one-eyed pupil split into 2. They looked quite similar to a human's. Its ugly appearance also became gentle gradually. It was quite similar to the primordial demoness statue carved on the 5 mountains that Watson had seen previously. The other leaders of the Demoness bandit gang opened their mouths wide. They confirmed that Watson had fused the Great Sin mask. Furthermore, Lady Sloth was the strongest among them. If she could not defeat Watson, then none of them were his match, even if they combined their power. They thought that after Watson had cast a platinum-tier spell, his strength would be much weaker than before, and they would be able to defeat him easily. However, they did not expect him to remain strong. Who's next? Watson looked at the remaining Lady Greed and the other woman in black who wore a bamboo hat and did not have a noticeable appearance. The women took a step backward, and that included Lady Greed. The woman, dressed like a black fog, paused for a few seconds before she slowly walked toward Watson's direction. A pair of jet black combat aura wings flapped behind her as they off a storm filled with pressure in the air. Envy. It was Envy who had taken action. I did not expect Envy to be so brave. She still dares to make a move. The young woman was lustful and emotional. Oh, right, I almost forgot that we still have Envy. Her mask can pull her opponent's strength to match ours. No matter how powerful he is, he would be no match for us once Envy activates her power. Then, she continued to growl, if he can still win under such circumstances, then we'll destroy the Envy's mask. No one will be able to get it. Even if they could not beat Watson, could they not defeat Lady Envy, who was at the same tier as them? It seemed like Watson wanted their masks, and if he had a need, they were not afraid. The higher-ups of the Demoness bandit gang seemed to have found a way to solve their predicament, which aroused their confidence. However, they were surprised when Envy walked up to Watson but did not attack him. Instead, she lifted her cloak and revealed a fiery red-haired head and a crescent-shaped distorted human mask. Then, Envy took the mask off her face and handed it to Watson respectfully with both hands. Envy had the same fiery red pupils under the mask, but the pupils were vertical. Scales had grown on both sides of her cheeks. That was the characteristic of a subhuman called the Flame Elf. You are Watson, right? Master Watson, please accept my mask. Watson was dumbfounded when he saw Envy's sincerity. He stood rooted to the ground, and the other leaders of the Demoness bandit gang were also speechless. Chapter 117. 6 in 1 Mask. Envy, what are you doing? Why did you give the mask to this person? Are you crazy? Envy's companions behind her shouted. However, Envy turned a deaf ear. She just turned her head to look at everyone with a hint of disdain in her eyes. I'm not crazy. You guys are the ones who are crazy. Don't forget, the Demoness bandit gang used to be a church before they became a bandit gang. But now I see that you guys have fallen from devout believers to real bandits. The women gasped as Envy continued to say, no matter what you think, I only have one goal, to reassemble the masks and listen to the teachings of the primordial Demoness again. And this person confused masks, which means that he is the one chosen by the Demoness. She turned around again. Envy lowered her head. Young Master Watson, I'm Envy. I'm willing to be your most loyal servant and help you get the remaining masks. What is this? Watson was stunned. The enemy had experienced internal strife and then a betrayal. He thought he would obtain the remaining mask through his continuous fusion of magic to intimidate the enemy. However, he had not expected that the other party would take the initiative to place the mask in front of him and even wanted to be his subordinate. Did they want to trick him? Perhaps they wanted to take advantage of his carelessness to stab him? Alan and the others, who were not far away, and the manor owners were also dumbfounded. What had happened? The leader of the Demoness bandit gang is defecting to the enemy. Did they discover Watson's identity as the border count's illegitimate child, just like I did? Sven stared at the scene with his eyes wide open. He could not help but think that. However, he felt that something was not right. That should not be the case. The Demoness bandit gang's predecessor was a large organization. Furthermore, he saw the Demoness bandit gang summon a platinum-tier primordial Demoness projection. They should not be afraid of the border count, who was also a platinum-tier mage. Since the battle was over, would they get some praise? The group of manor owners thought about that. The primary purpose of their presence was to supplement Watson's goal and to showcase his strength. They felt that they had fulfilled their responsibilities and got closer to him at the same time. Young Master Watson is too strong. He has conquered the most powerful bandit gang at the border in such a short period, a manor owner said. Not far away from him, another manor owner said, well said. I'll add one more point. This is really an easy battle. It would be even better if my arm weren't broken. Half of their praises were exaggerated, and the other half came from the bottom of their hearts. A small number of them had died, while most of them were only slightly injured. That was the cost they had to pay to wipe out the bandit gangs at the border. It was an impressive battle record. Alan was the proudest among those people. He stood in front of the crowd with his hands on his hips. He looked very pleased with himself. See, what did I say? I told you that my young master could deal with these people easily. If I went with him, I would only cause trouble. As you can see, they didn't even need to make a move. They were conquered by young master's domineering aura. My admiration for the young master gets deeper every day. Alan heaved a sigh of relief discreetly. He had felt very nervous when Watson fought against the 5 leaders of the Demoness bandit gang by himself. He had made up his mind to rush forward to help Watson if something were to go wrong. Fortunately, Watson managed to escape the danger by himself too. The people around him, including Sven, acted as if they did not hear him. Meanwhile, at Watson's location, Envy turned around to face her companions after she revealed her actual appearance. Her body was covered with black flames, and her fiery red eyes were cold. The God's chosen one has been found. I hope that all of you will hand your mask to him and submit to Master Watson obediently. Otherwise, all of you are enemies of the primordial demoness. You are traitors. Greed, I'm talking about you. Greed's mask flickered non-stop as it showed the excitement in her heart when she was singled out. She was unwilling to give up the mask on her face. It was just as Envy had said, they had already fallen from devout believers to filthy thieves. The change was due to the power brought by the Great Sin Mask. However, one had to pay the price to obtain any power. The mask gave them strength, but at the same time, it also affected their hearts and controlled their emotions. How can you be so greedy? Are you not willing to hand over the mask? Does this mean that rather than getting the masks fused, you want to keep it for yourself? The black flames on Envy's body became denser. Greed rubbed her fingers, and a few golden coins appeared on her fingertips. However, the runes carved on the coins were not quite the same as those from that time. Instead, they looked like they were ancient coins. She held the coins and thought for a while before finally putting them down. Then, finally, she placed her hand on her face with great difficulty and used great strength to tear off the mask to reveal the face of an ordinary woman with sparse eyebrows and pale skin. Her name was Greed. She sought out all the precious things in the world. Nothing fascinated her more than shiny gold treasures. However, no matter how precious the treasures, they were not as valuable as her life. Envy, you are too stubborn. Alright, you win. I choose to hand over the mask and submit myself to Master Watson. In the end, she joined the demoness bandit gang and became one of the higher-ups. However, she had wanted to climb up the ranks for benefits. Envy was different from her. They said that she was once a believer of the demoness church before its dissolution. At that time, the demoness bandit gang had not been established yet. Very well, you have made a wise choice. The flame elf named Envy walked up to Greed and took the mask from her hand. Then, she handed it to Watson respectfully. Master Watson, you have collected 6 masks, only Pride's mask is left. After that, you can fuse them to complete the Platinum tier equipment, the Great Sin Mask. Pride is currently at the Mage Guild in Monty Town. Don't worry, it will take 3 days, but I will find her and help you obtain the last mask. 3 days is too long. How about 1 day? Watson asked casually. He wanted to know if Envy really wanted to help him or if she was setting a trap to harm him. Yes, Master Watson, I will try my best. Envy gritted her teeth. She was in a difficult position, but she still responded forcefully. Your companion wants to submit to me. What do you think? Do you want to join us? Watson held 2 masks in his hands and looked around him. The women hesitated for a long time. Then, finally, Greed sighed and knelt, followed by Wrath. They knelt unwillingly. The last to do that was Sloth. They closed their pure white eyes and lowered their heads helplessly. Envy had betrayed them, and she knew them well. That put them at a disadvantage if they were to fight against Watson. If they did not surrender, they would die. On the other hand, if they yielded, then they still had a chance to live, so it was not a difficult decision. Furthermore, they were very curious about Watson's fusion method. They had tried everything, but it had been useless. They would not act rashly before Watson restored the Great Sin Mask. When everyone submitted to him, Watson had already begun to fuse with the remaining 2 masks. System, activate fusion. As soon as he said that, the 2 masks in his hands turned into rays of white light and fused with the mask on his face. The shape of the mask had changed from a ferocious beast to a gentle outline. That change was even more obvious. At that moment, the appearance of the mask was almost impossible to see. It was like skin as thin as a cicada's wings. It fitted Watson's face perfectly. It was a woman's face, so beautiful that it was suffocating. At the same time, turbid and illusory eyeballs appeared on Watson's body. They opened and closed. It made everyone felt as if they would be petrified. It was the same as the eyes of the primordial demoness. Then, the attributes of the 6-in-1 mask appeared in front of him. Chapter 118. Heaven-defying skill. Gold tier special item. Great Sin Mask, with minor flaw. Effect. Resists attacks from Platinum tier elites. Side effects include that the user's emotions will become very volatile after wearing the mask, and the user will have a feminine appearance. Additional effects. Devour, Taste, Touch, Anger, Giant, Advanced Charm, Affinity, Money enhancement. From the mask of greed. Use gold coins to increase the strength of yourself and your teammates. The more gold coins you use, the greater the increase. Good luck. Forced equality. From the mask of jealousy. After using it, the opponent's strength can be equal to your own, but it is ineffective against those whose strength is too much higher or lower than your own. Shadow doppelganger. Invisible hand. Making attacks undetectable, and energy storage. Additional skills. Evil God's protection. Death ray haunt. Perfect mimicry. Can transform into another person or even an animal. Emotional resonance. Can affect the emotions of people nearby. The stronger the opponent's willpower, the weaker the effect. The primordial demoness summon. Can summon the projection of a platinum tier primordial demoness and use its power. As he looked at the attributes in front of him, Watson stretched his hand outward and touched the mask on his face subconsciously. It had already become one with his face. It was like touching his skin. There are so many skills. I'll try the defensive power of this mask first. Watson opened his arms and began to chant the gold tier magic humanoid auto-mind giant spell. Soon, 100 water elemental giants that were more than 10 meters tall appeared beside him. Each one had a terrifying aura. The sudden appearance of the spell surprised the demoness bandit gang leaders, who had taken off their masks. They did not expect that after such an intense battle, Watson still had so much power. If they had not chosen to surrender, they might have become corpses. The women looked conflicted. At the same time, they were a little puzzled. Why did Watson use such a powerful spell after the battle was over? Was he trying to silence them? Just as they were puzzled, Watson had already controlled more than 100 water elemental giants that were floating in the air as they charged straight at them. Watson's 10-year-old body was like a toothpick in front of the water giants. The water giant's toe was larger than him. The uneven height gave people a strange and distorted feeling. Humanoid auto-mind giant, explode. Then, Watson gave an order, and all the mind giants around him exploded. It had triggered a chain reaction. The explosion range of one mind giant was dozens of meters, and the range of 100 mind giants was hundreds of meters. The explosions overlapped each other. The dense water vapor spread out in a ring shape and formed a vast mushroom cloud in the sky. Is he crazy? He controlled the magic to attack himself. The demoness bandit gang leaders were sent flying backward by the violent magic waves. The combat aura wings on their bodies were torn into pieces due to the strong wind. Bloody marks appeared on their bodies. Alan, the rest of the men, and the magical beasts were also blown away from the explosion. Fortunately, they had stayed away when Watson released the platinum tier spell, so they were not seriously injured. Alan, Watson is attacking himself. Is this also within your expectations? Sven asked with a strange expression. He had finally managed to control his two-winged liger with incredible difficulty. Before he left the shabby bandit gang, he had put on the silver tier armor that Watson had given him. Otherwise, he would have been even more embarrassed. Well, Alan's expression was a little awkward. How could he have thought that Watson would attack himself? Compared to his confusion, he was even more worried. The young master did not release an ordinary spell, but he was not injured. The explosion had ended as he pondered that. A huge hole appeared in the clouds in the sky. Watson looked beautiful as he stood there. His short brown hair fluttered in the wind, and the clothes on his body did not have the slightest crease. Very good. I am not disappointed with the fusion ability after the great effort I put in to search for the Great Sin Mask. Even gold tier magic could not break through it. The corners of Watson's mouth curled into a strange arch. Other than the increase in defense, the Great Sin Mask has also gained many magical skills. They are also very helpful to me. After careful calculation, he discovered that the Great Sin Mask had 12 skills. Each broken mask had 2 primary and secondary skills. For example, the Envy Mask's primary skill was forced equality, and its secondary skill was the shadow clone. As a result, it could summon a shadow that had half of its strength as a fighter. The disadvantage was that it could not be too far away from the main body and could not exist for a long time. Obviously, one had to gain those skills, so Sloth did not use any when fighting with him. Another example was luck and energy storage, which were the secondary skills of the Greed and Sloth masks, respectively. Luck could increase one's luck. One could go out and find some money or let their opponent be crushed to death by a passing meteorite during a battle. Those were the effects of luck. Watson felt that he could apply that to the system fusion in the future. Energy storage was an even stronger skill. It could accumulate energy that he did not use, and when he needed it, it would explode simultaneously to display a power several times or even 10 times the usual count. First, however, he had to fall asleep to store energy. Watson looked at Sloth, whose body was stained with blood as she was sent flying backward. He sighed discreetly. These women are not weak, especially with the enhancement of the Great Sin Mask. A silver-tier warrior has the strength equivalent to a gold-tier elite. If it weren't for the Envy's betrayal that led to their internal strife, I would only be able to defeat them if I used up all the energy in the chaotic elemental magic source in a real battle. That battle was the most difficult one that Watson had ever experienced since he transmigrated to that world. Even the fight with the allied manor owners was not that difficult. Fortunately, everything is settled now. Watson touched his face. His beautiful face immediately changed back to his original appearance. That was the additional skill, perfect mimicry, after the mask fused. He could not only change his face, but he could also adjust his height. After the Great Sin Mask had fused 6 times, there were 3 additional abilities. They were perfect mimicry, emotion resonance, and primordial demoness summoning. According to Watson's judgment, every shattered Great Sin Mask carried a primary gold tier and secondary silver tier techniques. Furthermore, the fused additional techniques were more powerful and practical than those. With this mask, I can protect myself no matter what dangers I encounter at the border in the future. Even if he were to face the legendary Platinum tier Archmage Border Count, he could still escape even if he could not defeat him. That was only the effect of the fused 6 masks. That is if he could gather all the Great Sin Masks. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. At that moment, Alan brought a group of manor owners to control the magical beasts. Then, he went to Watson with a flattering smile on his face. "Young Master Watson, I did not expect you to look so handsome when you cast your magic. I would like to ask, how can I become as outstanding as you?" The people who came with him resisted the urge to vomit. Watson also had a strange look on his face. He knew that Alan was an arrogant man, and there was no good way to stop him. However, he could use one of the Great Sin Masks to remedy that situation. He used emotional resonance on Alan. Chapter 119. Pride in the Mage Guild. "Young Master Watson, I can't take my eyes off your handsome face. If you were a girl, I would have fallen in love with you. But, if you were a mature man, I think I would have become your most loyal servant." Alan gestured with his hands on his chest and was about to say more about Watson's strengths. Suddenly, he felt a wave of panic. He had completely forgotten what he was about to say. His expression became stiff as a wave of fatigue accompanied by drowsiness assaulted him. He wanted to close his eyes. What had happened? Alan panicked. He opened his mouth and asked, "What's wrong with me? I suddenly feel so sleepy and sad." He cried. The people around looked at Alan as if he was an idiot. They thought that Alan wanted to collect rewards again. They decided to ignore him. Instead, they bowed to Watson and said, "Young Master Watson, thank you so much for your help. If it were not for you, we would be in danger, so." They wanted to thank Watson first and then express their loyalty. At the same time, they wanted Watson to help treat the injured men. They had suffered many casualties when they attacked the Demoness bandit gang because of the primordial Demoness. Many of their guards were petrified, and many manor owners had lost their limbs. Since Watson was so powerful, he should be able to remove the petrification spell. However, they felt a fit of inexplicable anger in their hearts, and it affected their words. "So, young Master Watson, you have such powerful strength. Why did you not act earlier?" "That's right. If you had acted earlier, we would not have ended like this. You intentionally let our men die and used this as an opportunity to suppress us and take over our manor, right?" You be ****. The moment the words came out of their mouths, a few bright manor owners covered their mouths. Their expressions were filled with anger mixed with panic. What had happened? Those were not the words they wanted to say. They had uttered such disrespectful words. Would Watson kill them? Watson watched all of them with a calm expression. "You don't have to worry. This matter is related to Black Moon Castle, so I will compensate for all of your losses." Those people had acted like that because of the emotional resonance that he had activated. If he wanted to make those people angry, then they would be furious. If he wanted to make them sad, no one would be able to laugh. According to his test, the range of the emotional resonance was quite extensive, at least 100 meters. The only drawback was that when he made others fall into excited emotions, he would experience a similar effect. Fortunately, he had lived 2 lifetimes, and his soul strength was stronger than an average person. So he forcefully suppressed the mixed emotions in his heart and decided to take off the mask on his face when he got home to see if there was a way to remove the side effects. Isn't that what you should do? I mean, thank you, young Master Watson. One of the manor owners changed his words forcefully and bit his tongue. It caused his face to twist in pain. How can you compensate for human life? Are you going to use gold coins to buy the lives of our men? How interesting. 100 gold coins for a person. Otherwise, it would be difficult for me to believe your sincerity. Slap. Before the other manor owner could finish his sentence, he raised his hand and slapped himself viciously. He sounded like he wanted to cry. Young Master Watson, I did not mean what I said just now. I don't know what's wrong with me either. It's okay. I can understand your feelings. Watson blinked. He had a childish, innocent look on his face when he cancelled the emotional resonance spell discreetly. The people around him immediately returned to their normal selves. The angry people were no longer mad, and Alan no longer cried. Instead, all of them looked at Watson with admiration. They had spoken ill of Watson, but he had comforted them instead. What an angel. They lived in a world where people respected those who were strong. Watson could have killed them and seized their properties. However, he did not do that. Instead, he was kind enough to eliminate all of the bandit groups. So what if they had to pay the price to bear witness to that historic feat? As long as you do your best to work for Black Moon Castle, then I won't mistreat you. Alright, if there's nothing else, we shall head back. We'll talk about the rest after we leave the misty forest. Phew. After he confirmed that he was fine, Alan let out a long sigh and rubbed his cheeks. Young Master Watson, what about the Demoness Bandit Gang? Watson turned his head and looked at the Demoness Bandit Gang leaders. They looked pitiful. Other than envy, the other women stared at him with conflicted expressions on their faces. Bring them back with us. If anyone disobeys, then, Watson wanted to ask him to kill them. He had snatched their masks. They would not let the matter rest. Furthermore, he did not think highly of them due to his experience with Lady Gluttony. Therefore, he was not willing to accept them into Black Moon Castle even though they were silver-tier elites. However, before he could finish speaking, the Demoness Bandit Gang leaders knelt in front of him. Envy was the first to do that. Young Master Watson, we'll go with you. The women looked calm. First, it was because their lives were threatened. Then, it was because of what Watson had just done to them. Those were the 2 reasons they wanted to go with Watson. The Demoness Bandit Gang had a complete description of the Great Sin Mask. Before it broke, the Great Sin Mask had the magical ability to affect the emotions of others. Watson had displayed that ability perfectly, and they wanted to know how he did that. Monty Town. On the main road not far from the town entrance was the Mage Guild. It had a big sign, and it was exceptionally lively that day. There were luxurious carriages with different signs parked at the entrance. Many guards stood outside those carriages, and it was quiet inside the Mage Guild. The young ladies at the counter did not even dare to breathe loudly while a high-profile meeting was held on the 2nd floor. The people in the meeting included the Mage Guild's president, vice president and 4 elders. Everyone, tell us, what do you think about Elder Folson's death at the border? Audrey sat at the head of the table. Her long eyelashes drooped as they covered her beautiful black eyes that were as gorgeous as the starry sky. Her long hair almost reached her waist, but half of it was covered by the mage hat she wore. Even though she asked the question, Audrey did not look at the 6 people across from her. Instead, she trimmed her light purple nails casually. She had just colored her nails, and there was a faint floral fragrance on them. She had acted insolently, but those powerful mages did not dare to complain about it. Lady Audrey was the Mage Guild's president. She was a powerful gold-tier mage. However, they did not know that Audrey had another identity. She was Pride, the Demoness Bandit Gang's leader. Chapter 120, The Astrologer. President, since no one else is talking, then let me begin. The person who spoke sat at the right side of the long table. He wore a heavy gray robe, and he looked old. As he spoke, the old man reached out and stroked his gray-white goatee. My suggestion is to gather all the mages in the guild immediately and head to Black Moon Castle to eradicate that force. Killing a mage guild elder is a crime that we cannot tolerate. If they are not severely punished, the mage guild will not be able to continue to have a foothold in Monty Town. That elder was Leonard. He was the vice president of the mage guild in Monty Town, and he was also a gold tier mage. He was great at fire elemental magic. However, even though they were gold tier mages, he was much weaker than Audrey, who had mastered dark elemental magic. Therefore, he was very respectful toward her. Vice President Leonard, that doesn't seem appropriate. I heard that Folsom died because he was bribed by a manor owner named Zangul. All these years, Folsom has been working as a bounty hunter behind our backs. We have always turned a blind eye to such things, but that doesn't mean that what he did was right. The person who spoke sat next to Leonard. It was a middle-aged woman with freckles on her face, and she had messy hair. She was in a fiery red robe. Her name was Anna, the Mage Guild's chief elder, and just like Leonard, the vice president, they were both fire elemental mages. However, she was at the peak of the silver tier. Most mages who practiced fire elemental magic were short-tempered. In addition, both of them used almost the same materials to practice, and that resulted in frequent friction. Therefore, Anna would always say the opposite of what Leonard said. Of course, she did not think that Folsom's death was Black Moon Castle's fault. Who could they blame if that person coveted another's property? They could only blame their lack of strength. After Anna finished speaking, Leonard looked at her with an unhappy expression. Then, their gazes met, and sparks flew. I agree with the vice president's words. If you touch one of us, then it doesn't matter if the other party has made a mistake or not. Just kill him. Otherwise, people will think that the Mage Guild is easy. It isn't a matter of right or wrong, but a matter of dignity. What do you think, Lady Audrey? A magnetic voice echoed from the side. It was a young man. He had golden hair and a handsome face. At that moment, he had his hands wrapped around the back of his head. He deliberately raised his chair and shook it gently. It made people worry that he would fall. As soon as he finished speaking, the blonde young man stared intently at Audrey. His eyes were filled with undisguised love. Audrey did not look at him, nor did she seem to be able to hear his voice. Instead, she continued to fiddle with her beautiful fingernails nonchalantly. Then, Anna turned her head in dissatisfaction. Martin, do you mean that you're on Leonard's side? I'm not taking anyone's side. I'm just standing on the side of justice. So what do you think, President? Martin continued to focus on Audrey. When he realized that she ignored him, he curled his lips and cast his gaze at the man behind him. He did not say a word. He had messy brown hair, and his figure was as tall as a giant bear. Mr. Hilbert, you are known as the unbreakable barrier. Do you have any objections? Hilbert had his eyes closed. His resolute face exuded an oppressive aura. Furthermore, he did not wear a mage's robe. Instead, he was in a set of chained armor. As a result, no one could tell if he was a mage. Hilbert remained silent upon Martin's question. He did not move, it was as if he was asleep. Martin shrugged. Didn't you say that you wanted to discuss it? So why aren't you talking? This conversation can't go on like this. Well, then there's no need to continue this meeting. Audrey set her fingers onto the table and raised her head slightly. Her starry eyes seemed bottomless as she looked at everyone there. From now on, all of you can shut up. I'll speak. The moment she opened her mouth, the mages held their breaths. Even Hilbers, who had dozed off, opened his eyes. Audrey's slender fingers tapped on the table. 3 days. I'll give you 3 days. I want to see heads from everyone in Black Moon Castle. Winters is coming, so I have a lot of things to do. 3 days should be enough for all of you. Don't disappoint me. Otherwise, you know what kind of punishment you'll receive. Yes, President. All the mages, including Martin, smiled bitterly. Their president was a very arrogant person. She often made decisions without listening to them, and she always pretended to let them talk about it. They were already used to it. But Anna was the only one who hesitated and wanted to say something. Crack. Before she could speak, the chair beneath her suddenly shattered, and the broken wood splinters splattered all over her body. Cracks appeared on the ground, and it forced Anna to stand up in a sorry state. Her expression was one of pain. Audrey pointed her finger at Anna, and a faint black glow appeared on the tip of her finger. Then, she exerted heavy pressure on Anna, which caused her body and calves to tremble non-stop. But what? Anna, Are you doubting me? You should know that that world revolves around me. Anyone who disobeys me will die. The Mage Guild lost an elder a while ago, but I don't mind losing another one. The arrogant words from Audrey's mouth sounded so natural. Lady Audrey, it's not what you think. I only wanted to say that Black Moon Castle can wipe out Folsom and the Allied forces from more than 10 manors. Perhaps they have some secret weapon. I even sent someone to inquire about it. They said that Black Moon Castle's young master, Watson, is the Border Count's illegitimate son. So if we were to attack Black Moon Castle, would we anger the Border Count as well? Anna's voice trembled. She tried her best to maintain her posture as she defended herself. Lady Audrey, I'm not disobeying you. I'm just worried. What are you worried about? The Border Count? Even though we're at the border, the Mage Guild had been established by His Majesty. So even if the Border Count had a grudge against His Majesty, he would not dare to oppose us so openly and shed all pretense of cordiality with His Majesty unless he wanted to rebel. Martin spread his hands and said with a relaxed expression, how about that? If Anna doesn't want to go, then I can go. I can wipe out a small force at the border by myself. Anna, I hope you can finish your words before I lose my temper next time. Audrey retracted her fingers and deactivated the spell. She leaned against the comfortable, soft chair. You don't have to worry about the Border Count. I've already received the notice that the Royal City's Lord Astrologer will come to Monty Town tonight or tomorrow. The Border Count can't do anything with him around. The Astrologer? The few mages looked at each other in surprise. They had all heard of that name. Anyone who studied magic would have known that name. If the Border Count was the strongest mage in the kingdom, then his predecessor was the Astrologer. After all, he was Lord Sylvan's teacher. The Astrologer had not shown his face in public for more than 10 years. Instead, he had been staying in the Constellation Palace that the king had built for him. He was to calculate the kingdom's direction there. If the Astrologer comes here, then the matter will be resolved. He is a Platinum tier mage. If he wants to destroy Black Moon Castle, then he only needs to lift a finger. He could probably do that in a day. I did not expect a big shot like him would come to such a remote place like Monty Town. Did he think we performed really well and wanted to give us some pointers? If we can get some pointers from him, we'll definitely advance further. The Mage Guild's elders and the vice president heaved a sigh of relief. Finally, they were no longer worried about Black Moon Castle. Instead, they looked forward to a meeting with the Astrologer.